Strategy 5 is least to most prompting, or what some people call a prompting hierarchy. And there are different prompting hierarchies that exist. In general, they have a lot of overlap, but you'll see slight variations depending on the source that you use. But least to most prompting is a hierarchy of prompts, starting with the least intrusive and then gradually increasing support and giving individuals the opportunity to respond independently first and only offering them more support if needed. I think sometimes we, myself included, have a tendency to just want to help and jump in with lots of support before really taking the time to figure out if a student actually needed all of that support. So this image is a little blurry, but it links to you can click on it and open the actual source that's going to be more clear. But the least intrusive form of prompting on this prompting hierarchy is just that wait time, the pausing and waiting. You'll also see it described as a language strategy called expectant wait. So you might ask a question, there's some kind of communication opportunity, and you give the user time to process and respond using some kind of expectant pause. Sometimes there might be a facial expression or a body gesture to show I'm expecting, maybe you're going to do something, what's going to happen. Then you might move to a gestural cue where you can either point, motion, turn, use your body language to direct them to the device. Sometimes I'll push the device closer to indicate that it's their turn to respond. Then you might use a verbal cue, but it's indirect. So instead of saying this is what you want them to say, you might make an open-ended statement like, I wonder what's next, or I wonder what you're thinking. If that doesn't work, then you may move to a more direct verbal or visual cue. So you might point, not activate the button, but point to the device where, you could say this maybe if you wanted to, or verbally telling them the word. Then you're going to move to modeling. So model it and then wait and see if they imitate that, but you're showing them what they can communicate. If you do have students that need some kind of physical prompt, we really encourage you to avoid the use of hand over hand. We'll talk about why a little bit on the next slide. But if they do need some kind of physical assistance, using hand under hand, which is your hand would be on the bottom, offer, whether if they want to, the student can put their hand on top of yours. A lot of our students will grab your hand on their own and want to move it to where they want it to go. What's different is that instead of you grabbing their hand and them not being able to get away, they can always take it off if they want to. And it's also just less intrusive. If a student is doing that, I would make sure to try your best to relax and not subconsciously kind of direct where the student might want your hand to go, unless you're saying, I'm going to show you where want is. I'm going to show you where more is, so that you don't influence what it is that they might want to say. Some students maybe just need like a tap on the elbow, something to lightly physically prompt them towards the device. This, you can also click and get the source material because I know it's hard to read, but this talks about what some of our problems with hand over hand are. Research has actually shown that it's not an effective teaching strategy for really any kind of skill. And it takes away the opportunity to teach that actual initiation of the motor task because we're initiating it for them. It takes away the student's learning of the actual motor plan to do that task. It also sends a message to our students who are already at risk of abuse that it's okay for people to touch them, even if they didn't want them to. It's okay for us to make them do things that maybe they didn't want to do. It also operates on the assumption that we know what it is that they want to say and we're going to make them do it. It's for AAC, it's close to the concept of putting words in somebody else's mouth that we don't know if they want to say or not. And it also sends the message that what we want them to say is more important than what maybe they wanted to say. Also thinking about what you can do instead before we watch this video, because I know that hand over hand still is a prevalent practice in education. And so just saying, let's not do that without some kind of alternative. So again, hand under hand can be an alternative. That light prompt to the elbow can be an alternative. Some kind of visual cueing system. So like the pointer, or I've seen some people use either cutting out a colorful square or bending a pipe cleaner to draw attention to something that they want the student to look at on the device so that you can still draw attention without actually touching the student. So in this video, there are times where you can't hear every word that's being said, but for the most part, I think you can hear it. And this is a parent coaching session with Rachel Madel. And what I really like is she's talking to the parent about prompting and also explaining why she's saying the things that she's saying.
Yay! Very good! Yay! I want to put these videos on smile. Wow. Yay!
So I'm cueing him, but I'm not telling him what to say, right?
He needs to understand what you were. Just have patience.
So right now we need to like cue his brain to be like, I'm not going to do that thing that I want to do. But again, I'm trying to not give support until he shows me that he needs it. Because we want him to be as independent as possible.
I know that you forget. He does it, but in the second he forgets what he was doing. Ellie, what you doing? Ellie?
There we go. Yay! Get in! Yay! Uh-oh. Hold on a second. Fun. Nice work! That was on your own. So I moved the device because we're really having interaction here. Nice job! Yes! High five. Woohoo! Nice work. You did great with that. And like I just added pig, so he's totally got it.
Yeah.
And he just did that last one on his own. But again, like we want to be really careful about how much we're asking him to say things, how much we're even saying, what do you want? Right? You notice how it's kind of silent?
Yeah.
It's kind of just like waiting him out. Because again, all of that is levels of support, which we can totally give him, but I don't start there, right? I start kind of just waiting him out to see and tempting and pausing. And eventually, he's going to become more independent. He's going to become a more independent communicator. I want him to think, I have an idea, and I'm going to share that, right?
And this is how.
And this is how. To teach him how to initiate. And it wouldn't even matter if he hit the right button. I just want him thinking, I have an idea, I'm going to communicate it using this device. Once we have that foundation, we can expand vocabulary. But if we don't have that foundation, then he's just going to wait for us, and he'll follow our models and imitate us, but he's not actually going to be thinking independently and then formulating independently through the device.
So what I like about that video is you see her use wait time, you see her use pointing gestures. She does a little bit of modeling, and I really like how at the end she explains that she wants him to think about, I have an idea and I'm going to share that. And that by over prompting him, he can become kind of prompt dependent on following models and copying what people want him to do instead of thinking, I have what I want to say and I'm going to say it no matter what it is. You can see that prompting hierarchy, you may not stick with one prompt in a single sit down session. You're moving between them. She started with the wait time, gave it some time, then moved to the gesture, even repositioned the device, changed the way that they were facing each other, moved to modeling a few times. So when we're coming to prompting, like we're trying to get a student to actually produce something, that wait time is really important. We've talked about modeling as being a really important strategy in the classroom for giving students exposure, not putting the demand on them that they're necessarily going to do anything. So that's different than using modeling as a prompt, where we're modeling and kind of hoping that they'll imitate us. But when we're using it in the classroom, we're doing lots and lots of modeling instead of necessarily starting at that wait time because we need to give them the exposure. It's when we're actually at the point where they've had the exposure and now we're trying to see if they're going to produce some language after all of that exposure, that we don't jump to modeling as the first thing that we do. So either on your own, kind of like we've discussed before, grab a friend, grab a student, whoever you want to practice with, and practice through what each one of these prompts feels like. What would it feel like to just pause and wait? What does it feel like to use a gesture? What does it feel like to use an indirect verbal cue? And then I want you to think about what kind of prompting have you been using most in your classroom? Have you been jumping straight to a physical assist? Have you been jumping straight to modeling when we're trying to actually see if a student will produce something? And what new prompt will you focus on incorporating a little bit more of this year? Again, prompting is fluid. You might use 3 or 4 of them with a single student in a single sit down. But maybe what is one that you could focus on getting a little bit more comfortable with? Maybe I jump straight to modeling and I want to become more comfortable with starting further back, maybe at an indirect verbal cue. So I'm going to practice becoming more comfortable with that this year instead of jumping straight to a direct verbal cue or modeling or a physical assist. So once you've taken an opportunity to practice and think about those discussion questions, we'll come back and discuss the last communication partner strategy.